here for the government in their mini shuffle today at the cabinet?
Well, it seems to me to be an attempt to distract from the obvious. You know, I mean, we've rightly been seized with the issue of interference from the Prime Minister and his office in the independent decisions of the Attorney General. So this seems a lot like kind of shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic when there's obviously much bigger issues at stake.
Do you think there's any real impact that any of these ministers can make in their new portfolios with such little time left to the election?
Well, it is a very short amount of time, and there aren't really a lot of new faces. And I think particularly of veterans here who have been frustrated for a while now that they haven't really been getting the attention that they deserve. Not just in the last month, but over the course of the government. That seems to be kind of the place that gets short shrift. And asking Lawrence MacAulay to be the champion for veterans when he did a very poor job for dairy farmers in this country, I think is not a great sign to veterans. I mean, he oversaw dairy farmers losing market share under TPP, under CETA, under the USMCA. So I'm not convinced that he'll be the kind of champion that Canadian veterans really need. So I don't think it was a great sign for them.
What about Canada's first female agricultural minister, who said today that she's proud to come from an area where there's lots of dairy farmers?
Well, that's great. I certainly hope she can do a better job than Lawrence MacAulay did in terms of defending the interests of Canadian dairy farmers. But I think, when it comes to big international trade deals, Liberals have been very quick to put the interests of large corporations ahead of the interests of Canadian dairy farmers. So I don't have a lot of optimism for that.
Do you have any thoughts on separating Attorney General from Justice? Do you think it would work better?
Well, I think that's an interesting idea, and it's something that people should consider studying. I think Jody Wilson-Raybell's suggestion was that the Justice Committee undertake a study of that. So I don't have any conclusions about it, but it's an interesting and important idea that's been raised, and it's something I would look forward to learning more about.
What's the danger if you keep them together?
Well, I think what we've seen is that decision makers in the Prime Minister's office are inclined to approach the Justice Minister and put pressure on the Justice Minister and use that as a veil for actually pressuring the Attorney General about matters that they shouldn't. So that is the risk. It's been a long-standing risk, and we've seen a current case where that's been exploited in order to engage in inappropriate political pressure.
Today we're expecting this legislation to be tabled about pardoning simple pot possession. What do you think with this government initiative to try and expunge former records of people that had criminal offenses for something that's now legal?
Well, our problem is that it's not an expungement. So, the real issue here is that now this is something that's legal. You have a lot of Canadians who have had small possession charges, and when they go to apply for a job, or if they apply to be a scout leader or something else and it requires a criminal record check, if they only get a pardon, they're going to have to check yes. And if they check yes, then they may not get the job and they may not be able to serve in their community for having done something that now is accepted as legal. So that's why Murray Rankin, my colleague from Victoria, presented a bill to actually expunge those records. That means that Canadians who do have a small possession charge from their past would be able to tick no, and they could get that job and they could get that position to serve their community. So that's why we think this pardon scheme just simply does not go far enough in ensuring that Canadians aren't punished for what is now something that's perfectly legal.
Okay, because the pardon doesn't remove the criminal record, essentially?
That's right, yeah. So expungement removes the criminal record, a pardon doesn't. So if you think about racialized and Indigenous communities, for instance, where you have a completely disproportionate level of convictions on these charges, they ought to be able to say, no, I don't have a record, because what they were guilty of doing is something that's perfectly legal now, and that will help them access employment, that will help them serve their communities, and it's time to truly turn the page. We can only turn the page with expungement. We can't do it with pardons.
Si je comprends bien, M. Blaikie, vous voulez que les dossiers criminels soient complètement supprimés. Qu'est-ce que ça change, ça?
Mais c'est la différence.
Where is the difference between having an opportunity to find a job or not? It might be a condition of employment not to have a criminal record. That might be a condition for getting the job. So we think that our proposal would allow people to actually get that job to feed your family and your community. You think it's really impossible to get a job even with this pardon scheme? Well, not Not if it's a condition. Not if it's a condition of the job. It doesn't apply to all jobs, of course, but for jobs, it would be impossible to actually get them if you have a criminal record. So our proposal would mean that Canadians with a conviction for possession would be able to have access to these jobs. Because what they did wasn't legal at the time, it now is. So I think it really makes sense they should have access to those jobs.
Mais c'était notre position que
Well, it's our position
devrait être dans le projet de loi.
this should be part of the bill. Should be in part rather of the bill that led to legalization. Doesn't really make sense that there's a period of time between when it was illegal and when it became legal. People should be able to get on with their lives. That's our position and has been right from the outset. Our position is that everything should have been done at the same time, or at least it should be done as quickly as possible. But it has to be a real solution, a genuine solution. And once this bill is passed, if people are still unable to actually get jobs, well, that means that there's no real solution to the real issue.
Ça va pas encore du temps, là, parce que le processus parlementaire.
Ben, je pense qu'un Canadien qui a jamais...
Well, I think
Alors, cet accord-là, c'est pas fait. Expliquez-moi ce que ça change, le fait que ce ne soit pas arrivé immédiatement. Comment ça peut pénaliser?
how do you think it penalizes people? Well, people who have been unemployed know that it's very important to find a job as quickly as possible. It's very frustrating when you're unable to find a job because you don't have an income. Now, if you want qualified Canadians to find jobs, to be able to feed their families, well, we should really make sure that these convictions be expunged as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.